Elizabeth Bathory was born in 1560 in a part of Hungary edging the Carpathian Mountains. The Bathorys were one of the oldest and wealthiest families in Transylvania. One of Elizabeth's relatives was a cardinal, several were princes of Transylvania, and her cousin, Count György Turso, was Prime Minister of Hungary. Undoubtedly, the most famous Bathory was King Stephen of Poland, who ruled from 1575 to 1586. But along with religion and affairs of state, the family had other interests. One uncle was a diabolist, and a brother a satyr. As a child, Elizabeth was betrothed to Count Ferenc Nadasdy. She was 15, and he was 26 when they were married on May 8, 1575. The bearded Count Ferenc added her surname to his, and thus the Countess continued to be known as Elizabeth Bathory. Elizabeth and Ferenc went to live at Castle Szeged in the Nitra country, located in northwestern Hungary. The Count was rarely home, as he was usually off fighting. A great soldier, he eventually became known as the Black Hero of Hungary. It appears that Elizabeth's manservant Torko induced her to the occult. In a letter to her husband, the Countess wrote, "Torko taught me a lovely new one. Catch a black hen and beat it to death with a white cane. Keep the blood and smear a little of it on your enemy. If you get no chance to smear it on his body, obtain one of his garments and smear that instead." Elizabeth temporarily eloped with the dark stranger, but upon her return home, the Count forgave her unfaithfulness. Back at Szeged Castle, Elizabeth chafed under the dominance of her mother-in-law, whom she hated. Aided by her old nurse, Ilona Jew, Elizabeth began torturing some of the servant girls at the castle. Her other accomplices included the mayordomo, Johannes Uvari, her manservant Torko, a witch, Dorothea Sentis, and a forest witch named Darvula. During the first 10 years of her marriage to Count Nadasdy, Elizabeth bore no children, but within the next 4 years, she gave birth to 3 boys and a girl. In 1600, Ferenc died. Elizabeth's epoch of real atrocities was about to begin. First, she sent her hated mother-in-law away. Then she turned to running the household for her own pleasure. Elizabeth was afraid of becoming old and losing her beauty. One day, a maid accidentally pulled her hair while combing it. Elizabeth instinctively slapped the girl so hard that she drew blood, which spurted onto her own hand. It immediately seemed to Elizabeth as if her skin in this area took on the freshness of that of her young maid. Blood. Here was the key to an eternally beautiful skin texture. The Countess then summoned Johannes Uvari and Torko. They stripped the maid, cut her, and drained her blood into a huge vat. Elizabeth bathed in it to beautify her entire body. Over the next 10 years, Elizabeth's henchmen provided her with new girls for the blood-draining ritual and her literal bloodbaths. But one of her potential victims escaped and informed the authorities about the gruesome goings at the castle. Upon hearing the news, King Matthias of Hungary ordered action. Elizabeth's own cousin Count György Turso, governor of the province, led a band of soldiers and guards on the night of December 30th, 1610. What a sight they saw within the castle. In the main hall, they found one girl dead, drained of blood, and another alive, whose body had been pierced with tiny holes. In the dungeon, they discovered a number of other living girls, some of whose bodies had been pierced. Below the castle, the authorities exhumed the bodies of some 50 girls. Elizabeth was placed under house arrest in her castle. A trial was held at Bixe during January and February of 1611. Elizabeth never appeared in the courtroom. She refused to plead either innocent or guilty. A complete transcript of the trial, made at the time it took place, survives in Hungary today and is the major document concerning this horrifying history. Johannes Uvari, the Countess's mayordomo, testified at the trial that as far as he knew, about 37 unmarried girls had been killed, 6 of whom he had personally lured to the castle with promises of jobs as serving girls. These victims were bound and then slashed with scissors. Sometimes Dorothea and Ilona tortured these girls. Otherwise, the Countess did it herself. Ilona Jew, Elizabeth's sole nurse, testified that about 40 girls had been tortured and killed. Everyone implicated in the killings, except for Countess Elizabeth, Ilona Jew, and Dorothea Countess, was beheaded and cremated. The latter two accomplices had their fingers torn out individually and were burned alive. Countess Elizabeth was never formally convicted of any crime. Instead, stonemasons were brought to the castle. They walled up the windows and the doors of the bedchamber, with the Countess inside, leaving only a small hole through which food could be passed. At first, Matthias II, the King of Hungary, had demanded the death penalty for Elizabeth, but because of the entreaties of her cousin, the Prime Minister, he agreed to the indefinitely delayed sentence, which meant solitary confinement for life. In 1614, 4 years after she had been walled in, one of the guards posted outside her chamber wanted a look at this woman, whose beauty was renowned far and wide. He saw her lying face down on the floor. Elizabeth Bathory, the Blood Countess, was dead. The extent of the ties between the Bathorys and the Draculas is not known. It is certain, however, that the commander-in-chief of the expedition that helped Dracula regain his throne in 1476 was Prince Stephen Bathory. In addition, a Dracula fief, Castle Vampyre, became a Bathory possession during the time of Elizabeth. It is interesting to note that the dragon motif is common to both families. The awesome Bathory crest displays 3 wolves' teeth, encircled by a dragon biting its tail. Finally, in some circles it is believed that the story of the Blood Countess was known to Stoker.